Sometimes the most beautiful projects begin with the most ordinary pieces. This plain wooden frame doesn't look like much right now, but by the end of this tutorial, you'll see rolling ocean waves, sparkling treasure, real sand, bubbles, and a mermaid scene that looks like it belongs in an upscale coastal boutique. Let me show you exactly how it all comes together. I'm Donna from Mason Creations, etc. And if you're ready, my friends, let's make a mess. I'm starting out with a plain wooden frame that holds a 5x7 photo. I'm going to remove the center area where the picture goes. I'm saving the cardboard because I'll be decoupaging a picture on it. I'm going to use this rice paper and the picture on the bottom. I have special plans for the treasure chest. Wait until you see what I do with it. The picture is smaller than the cardboard, so I'm going to have to do some paint blending. First, I'm removing all the sharp cut edges using a water brush. A water brush has a cartridge that you fill with water and then brush it on the napkin or rice paper. The water dispenses easily, so this is really convenient. You always want to tear your rice paper or napkin instead of cutting it. A torn edge is much easier to blend than a sharp cut edge. I'm tearing off all the white and taking it down to just the color. That will make it easier to blend the paint. I'm using Dixie Belle chalk mineral paint in the color cotton to paint the board where I'll be decoupaging my mermaid picture. I'm using a sponge stippler to apply the paint. It lays down more paint than a brush, so I should be able to get away with only one coat. Make sure you always paint white or a very light off-white wherever you're going to decoupage rice paper or a napkin. White allows the colors of your images to look more vibrant. Dark colors will make your images look dark and muddy. If you have a project that's going to require a dark background, I have a video that shows exactly how to do that and make it look great. I'll link it for you in my description box. I'm going to use Polyvine Heavy Duty Varnish in the satin finish as my decoupage adhesive today. I'll also be using it as my final sealer. This is my favorite formula and I use it in almost all my projects. I positioned my paper where I wanted it and lifted up one side. I'm adding the varnish section at a time and then pressing the paper down with more varnish on my brush. My crafty friend Elena L. from South Carolina wanted to see more ocean projects. Here you go, Elena. This video is for you, my friend. I'm laying down a cut piece of a Ziploc bag that I misted with water on top of the picture. I'm using a folded up paper towel to press out any would-be wrinkles or bubbles. I'm pressing from the center outward in all directions. Then I'll lift the plastic up very carefully. And I'll let this dry for a couple hours. The rice paper that I decoupaged is dry now, so I'm going to add another coat of varnish. I'm going to be doing some paint blending at the top and bottom of the picture. The edges of the paper need to be sealed so they won't soak up the paint. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. While the picture is drying, I'm going to start working on the frame. Before you start, make sure you've identified which side of the frame is the top and which is the bottom. There are a couple of places that I'm going to decoupage some little fish and shells. So that's going to need a white background. By the time I get the paper prepped, the paint will be dry and I can start on the decoupage. This paper has mostly shells, other than the jellyfish, which I am most definitely using. I'm separating the four that I'll be using from the sheet and removing all the extra white background. I like to remove as much of the excess white that I can. I'm going to be adding more images to the frame, but these four will be peeking from behind the clay, so I need to get them on there first before I can add my clay embellishments, which, by the way, are going to look like beautiful waves. Wait until you see the cute little fish I'll be adding to this frame. Later on in this video, I'm going to show you how to add sand to a project that won't fall off every time it gets touched or moved, or even breathed on. The way I'm going to show you, it's on there for good, and not even one grain of sand will fall off. It's so easy, you'll be amazed. I set the images where I wanted them and then began gluing them down using my varnish. If you'd like to learn more about any of the products I'm using today, be sure to visit my website. You'll find a complete materials list for this project in the Weekly Project Supplies tab with links to all the products I used. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. I always make the rice paper or napkin a little bit longer than what I'm going to need so that I can get a nice clean edge. I'm going to do this with a medium grit sandpaper. I'm running the sandpaper over the edge of my piece in a downward motion. Make sure you don't go upward, you'll risk lifting your rice paper or napkin. I'm using my favorite, Doss clay, to make some embellishments for this project. Doss clay is so easy to work with, dries quickly, and has very little shrinkage or cracking when dry. It's perfect for making molded pieces. After pressing the clay into the mold, I'm scraping off the excess with my palette knife. Then I'll smooth out the clay with some water. I'll put it in the freezer for 20 minutes, or a little longer if the clay is thick. Freezing the clay makes it rigid, so it just pops out of the mold easily. No fragile pieces will break off. I just removed my mold from the freezer. Watch how easily this just pops out of the mold. It's frozen solid, so I'll need to let it thaw for a few minutes, but not in the mold. Make sure you remove the clay from the mold right away as soon as you take it out of the freezer. While they're thawing, I take that time to smooth out the edges and remove any little pieces of clay that shouldn't be there. While they're still somewhat frozen is a great time to do this. They're still hard, so touching them won't destroy all that beautiful detail. They do thaw quickly and will be ready to glue to your project within a few minutes. I'm going to use Aleene's tacky glue to add my molded clay to my piece. I need to add this while the clay is still wet so it'll conform to the piece as it dries. This is the best glue I've found for attaching wet clay. If any glue seeps out from under the clay, I'm removing it right away with a clean, damp brush. I'm also pressing down all the edges of the clay very delicately to make sure they're all connecting with the piece. To find my website, just click on my profile picture below the title of this video, which takes you to my YouTube homepage. Then to the right of my picture, you'll see a blue link to my website. Now I'm adding another layer of clay right over top of the first one. It'll conform to the shape underneath and dry that way. I trimmed a little bit of clay off one area to make it fit properly. Then I put a small swirl over top of the cut piece so it blends. This is why you always glue your clay on when it's wet. Once it's dry, none of your pieces will conform with each other. And a crown at the top for our beautiful princess mermaid. So I'm going to let this dry overnight. I'm painting the frame white where I'm going to be decoupaging some pretty little fish. This dried in just a few minutes and I was ready to add my cute fish. I arranged them exactly where I wanted them. I made sure to point their faces in different directions. The fish is pointing upward on the left, so I pointed the fish on the right downward, and so on. Once I had them where I wanted them, I started gluing them down using my varnish, just like I did with the mermaid picture. This project is a great example of how your frame can be more than just a plain frame. It can actually become part of the picture. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. It's dry now, and I sanded off any paper that was hanging over the edges. I added a coat of varnish over all the fish and shells. I'm going to be doing some paint blending, so I need the rice paper images sealed well. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. Let the painting begin. I'm starting off using Pentart Turquoise Blue as my base color for the waves. Any clay that was over the edge of the frame, I made sure to paint on the back side. Now I'm going to do some paint blending. I'm using Pentart Turquoise Blue, Pentart Off-White, which is a cool white bordering on the gray side, and I used a light turquoise color, Tropic Bay Blue. I'm going to be using all three colors to blend the waves and fish together seamlessly. I started off adding some of the turquoise blue up against the wave. Now I'm using a small brush to dab some of the off-white paint together with the turquoise blue. Then I blended in some of the light turquoise. I used the off-white and turquoise to blend around the fish. I went back and forth with the colors until I was happy with the way it looked. Never painting, but dabbing the paint on. Dabbing the paint with a brush is creating a swirly effect that gives the illusion of water. In many of my videos, you'll see me using a variety of handy little tools that make crafting so much easier. Things like a turquoise cup cradle to keep round objects from rolling away, a bodabra for making beautiful bows in a snap, a water brush for separating rice paper and napkins, and so many other helpful favorites. If you're interested in checking out any of these items, you can find them listed on my website in my favorite supplies section under craft tools. Then I did the exact same thing to the other side of the frame. I added a little more of the turquoise around all the fish. I'm using Pentart paints in the colors hazelnut and white coffee to blend sand into the waves on the bottom. I even added a little white here and there to lighten it up around the images. I'm going to be blending the sand into the images of the shells, which will eventually appear to be buried in the sand. And again, I'm just dabbing the paint with my brush. I'm mixing the colors to create a natural looking sand. I went back and forth with the colors until I liked the way it looked. There's no right way or wrong way to do this. Just keep blending until you're happy. I did make it a little darker right up against the wave to create a shadow. Some of the spaces are tight, so I'll have some touch-up to do on the waves afterwards. And then I let this dry for about 30 minutes. While the paint is drying on the frame, I'm going to work on the picture. I'm using all the same paint colors. I'm dabbing some of the white coffee mixed with white at the top center above her head. I added some black to the turquoise blue to match the area at the top that is really dark. Where are you all watching from, my crafty friends? Let me know in the comments. I just love to see what cities and countries all my friends are watching from. I'm filming from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada in the United States. I'm blending the dark turquoise color and light turquoise in with the white at the top. Then I blended the light turquoise with the darker turquoise. I'm bringing all these colors right on top of the rice paper. This helps all the new colors blend with the existing colors in the paper. And again, just going back and forth with colors until they look good. I'm doing the sand exactly the same way I did it on the frame. Wait until you see the bubbles I'm going to add in a little while. Tiny little glass balls that catch the light beautifully. I'm going to do some dry brushing on the waves using my light turquoise. This will highlight the high areas on the details from the mold. I'm dipping just the tip of my brush into the paint. I'm wiping off most of it on a paper towel. You want your brush almost completely dry to get the proper effect. I'm skimming just the tip of my brush across the high points on the waves. You don't want the paint to go into any of the cracks or crevices, just lightly across the top. And the beautiful crown gets Pentart metallic paint in the color gold. I let the paint set for about 30 minutes and it's all dry now. I'm going to give the frame and the mermaid picture a coat of varnish. This will protect all the paint techniques I just applied. I'm also going to be doing some antiquing and need a shiny surface for that to work properly. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. I'm going to add a little depth and dimension by doing an antiquing technique. I'm using folk art antiquing medium in the color wooden bucket brown. I put a few drops in a little paper cup and added some water. I prefer my antique mediums somewhat runny. I'm brushing my antique on the piece, going over and around all the embellishments. I'm doing this in sections and wiping the antique off with a soft dry cloth right away before it can dry. Because of the gloss finish, it will wipe off the surface and stay in all the cracks and crevices, showing the details of the mold. Antiquing gives your embellishments some depth and dimension, making everything look 3D instead of flat. What a difference it makes. Everything just comes to life now. When visiting my website, you'll find a special code to save 10% on one order with a minimum of $50. This is from my wonderful sponsor, decoupagenapkins.com. Just for watching this video. Once on my website, click on the Discounts and Special Offers tab. I'm adding some antique around all the edges to give it a little bit of a distressed look. I want to brighten up the tops of the waves a little, so I'm adding a little dry brushing again, using white this time. I'm carefully just catching the very tops of the details. I still want all the other colors to show. I gave the paint about 15 minutes to dry, and now I'm going to glue the picture to the frame. I'm putting a bead of Aleene's tacky glue around the inside edge of the frame. Then I laid the picture in there and tightened up the tabs to hold it in place. Any glue that seeped to the front of the picture I removed right away with a clean damp brush. And I'll let this dry for a couple hours. Okay, here we go, my friends. If you've been waiting for the sand trick, we are there. I'm adding some sand to a little paper cup. I'm adding some of my Polyvine Heavy Duty Varnish to the sand. It won't take much, so I'm using a dropper to add it. Make sure your sand isn't dry and clumpy or runny, but saturated with the varnish. I'm adding the sand to the frame using my palette knife and then spreading it around with a stiff brush. I'm making sure to spread a little of it over the edge of the shell rice paper so they look somewhat buried in the sand. I added some to the picture as well. This sand is on your piece for good. None of it will fall off when touched. You can use the same method for applying glitter too. Using the varnish is a better choice than any type of glue. The varnish dries crystal clear, so all you see is just the sand. I just want to take a moment, all of my crafty friends, to say thank you for watching this video. If you're enjoying the content, it would be great if you could take a quick second and hit the like and hype buttons. I appreciate you for doing that. I have some awesome new projects coming up, so don't forget to subscribe. While the sand is drying, I'm going to add some pearls and rhinestones to the treasure chest. But first, two beautiful stones go in the center of the waves at the top and bottom. I'm using a rhinestone picker to add all my little embellishments. The tip is sticky, so it picks up the rhinestone or pearl and sets it on the glue. I'm using my varnish as a glue for the rhinestones and pearls. They are all different colors, so they look really pretty. I promised you bubbles, so here we go, my friends. Let's add some bubbles. They are Aurora Borealis, clear glass, teeny tiny little spheres in all different sizes. I'm going to use my varnish again to apply them. I drizzled the varnish on the picture and then used a little spoon to drop the bubbles on top of the varnish. They like to roll around until they stick in the varnish. I just tilted my frame to send them where I wanted them to go. These are so pretty and look just like bubbles. Since the varnish dries so clear, you won't see anything other than the bubbles when it's dry. I let everything dry for an hour, and now I'm giving the entire thing, picture and frame, a final coat of varnish to seal everything I did, including the antiquing and dry brushing. I varnished over top of the bubbles and the sand. Everything is on there pretty securely, so you don't need to worry about knocking anything off as you varnish. And then I'll let that dry for about an hour. If you follow me, you know this is going to need more gold. I'm using redesigned decor wax in the color Eternal, which is a gorgeous gold. I'm going to highlight all the waves and all the edges of the frame. This is going to be the last thing you add to your projects. It doesn't need sealing because it's a wax, so you do your final sealer before you add this. I'm putting a small amount of the rub on my finger and rubbing it together with my thumb. Smearing it around like that prevents a large amount of your product ending up in one place. I'm just catching the very tops of the waves, so it gives them a golden highlight. And now I'm happy. And I'll let this dry for a couple hours. If you enjoyed this project, I have a playlist where you can find a lot of other mixed media projects that you may enjoy. Click the picture on the right to be taken there. When you have a moment, my friends, make sure you check out my new website. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, and if you don't want to miss any new projects, you can subscribe by clicking my picture in the top right corner.